This is Inigo, a very attractive gingerbread man. He came straight out of Chumpton. He didn't have the best life. His parents were a pair of unloving hard ginger snaps who only cared for themselves. His father was killed by a licorice gang after getting into a fight outside of a casino. The gummy bear police arrived and told the family that their father died after 15 stabs to the bread box. This was the first of many devastating moments that were to come into Inigo's life. Subsequently, his mother left him and his older sister for another pair of kids, as she had been cheating on her husband for the past 5 years. At the age of 4, Inigo was alone with his sister, Lucatile, and they had to fend for themselves. Lucatile, with the training of her father, became a gingerbread assassin to pay for basic necessities. Inigo, with the training of his mother, became a street brawler in order to make money so that he could bribe the police to ignore Lucatile's crimes. Because of these factors in his life, he didn't always make the best choices. After spending years of constant brawls and assassinations, the Licorice Street Gang finally pinpointed where Lucatile and Inigo were located, and went there to finish off the family line. Lucatile managed to kill off all of the Street Gang members. However, she was arrested by the Gummy Bear Police for murder. Inigo was taken by the police under witness protection. Before Inigo did anything, he broke Lucatile out of prison and harbored her into witness protection. They were promptly deported to Candoria.
There they began new lives as immigrants in Candoria. Both of them separated, but kept contact via chocolate cell phones. Inigo received a job at Scott's Pho Shack. Unfortunately, Scott is very cheap, and constantly forgets to pay Inigo. Inigo also becomes an alcoholic as a result of moving to Candoria. Spending so much on alcohol, he gets pushed into debt. He then tries to get rid of the debt by receiving another job. He finds one at a candy bar. One night at the candy bar, he meets a Swedish fish model, Cynthia. Apparently, they're both alcoholics and immediately hit it off, realizing a little too much Kirschwasser made up their constitution. They got in a very sweet relationship, but they weren't always the happiest couple. They constantly fought over who got the ginger ale and rum cake. Cynthia had impunity. Inigo always lost. Eventually, Inigo and Cynthia, with their low-paying jobs, buy a crummy house.
Inigo began acting austere. Cynthia knew it. He played it off like nothing, but she could tell. Inigo left their house one night without saying anything. There was a voice telling Cynthia to follow after and reason with him, but she decided to do what she'd always done. She'd hoped that peppermint schnapps would help her forget everything, but all she could think about how she was a sucker for his sweetness.
She told herself, "You dum-dum, forget about him." Realizing how loud she was, the more she drank, the more her inhibition lowered. This made her determined to go find out what made Inigo act the way he did. There was no other place Inigo would go besides the candy bar to wash away his worries. But as she entered the revel, he was nowhere to be seen. Cynthia went around the room once, twice, 3 times, and came up with no luck. She began to feel scared. Where could he be? She raced to the bathrooms in an attempt to clear her mind. There, she realized that he was cheating on her. Inigo was acting the same way she did when she began cheating on him last year. She went to that last person's house, promptly yelling, "That brittle-faced Reese's piece!" as she heard Inigo. "Don't you taste sweet tonight, my dear?"
After finding out, Cynthia, being the hypocrite that she is, immediately started plotting her revenge. She went and talked to an electrical engineer, and she paid him with all of her savings to help her set up a trap, as she wanted to make the trap herself so she can taste the sweet victory of vengeance. The electrical engineer taught her that a switch is just something that closes a circuit that wouldn't be otherwise so that electricity can flow. He then taught her about Arduinos and how they can be programmed to do whatever she wants it to do. The next lesson revolved around motors, what they are, how to use them, and how to prevent problems such as backflow electricity generated by the motor. She then made a plan and started preparing the trap. She set up the main components while the engineer sets up the wiring. Then, in her rage and anticipation, she sits down, enjoying the thoughts of killing her freshly baked ex-boyfriend.
It was colder than most days when Inigo walked home, cheating on Cynthia, once again. It was nothing out of the usual. He memorized the walk home like the back of his hand, having taken it many times before. But this time, something was unusual to Inigo. A strange aura ran through his body. But he chose to ignore it, having felt it many times before. He reached his broken down home in a matter of minutes. In his drunken state, he didn't notice the pressure plate underneath the balcony, mistaking it for a new doormat. It was at this moment that he knew it wasn't a doormat. As he stepped onto the pressure plate, the balcony opened up from above and a huge cage dropped onto him. His fear quickly burned off all the alcohol, and a rush of panic swept through him. Inigo was in there for what seemed like hours, but he couldn't tell, as the cage blocked out any sunlight that could have come his way.
With Inigo being trapped, Cynthia decided that she would give him grace by torturing him instead. She poured melted sugar and threw the crumbs of his own flesh at him. After hours of this, Cynthia shared an anecdote of confrontation with Inigo about a man who had cheated on his wife. The wife killed the man. Inigo grew more fearful at this. Cynthia then threatened his life if he didn't stay with her forever.
Afterwards, Cynthia began to mass produce and sell her trap, becoming an entrepreneur. She made millions selling this trap to the candies that had been cheated on, and they all lived happily ever after. Just kidding. Cynthia locked up Inigo every night after he got home from work to ensure that he wasn't cheating on her again. Eventually, Inigo found a way to contact Lucatiel. Cynthia found out and assumed that Inigo was cheating on her again. Cynthia locked down the entire house with jawbreaker plates to ensure that no one could get in or out. She locked Inigo into a box and destroyed the key. During the lockdown, Cynthia was at another gingerbread man's house to cheat on Inigo again. This man goes by the name of Hershey. He was born in Pennsylvania. He was a tall, dark piece of chocolate. He was a semi-sweet with a little bit bitter. At this moment, Lucatiel arrived at the locked-down house and broke into it, freeing Inigo. He told her where Cynthia was most likely at, and Lucatiel rushed there. At the house, as the process was about to proceed, Lucatiel jumped in and shoved the knife down Cynthia's throat. The end.